Manchester United's season goes from bad to worse with a record of 6 defeats in our opening 10 matches. Andre Onana is in a world of his own. The defence is makeshift at best, and Casemiro picks up his first red card of the campaign. All while Rasmus Hojlund proves to be only silver lining with a brace against Galatasaray. Season ticket holders may wonder why there's a sticky piece of Turkish Delight stuck to the bottom of their seat. We can assure you the Glazers aren't being generous. That and more on the Strettycast, episode 173 with Nathan Thomas. It's been a while since we had you on the Strettycast. Times are bleak, but I hope you're keeping well.
I'm good, thank you, Dale. Yeah, that was a nice sunny day in Stretford, as I recall. We were enjoying a nice drink in the Blaze, and I think at the time, I feel like it was kind of hot on the heels of the League Cup final, not too far. We were looking ahead to another cup final at the time. So, yeah, things were certainly sunnier. Yeah, different times now, different times.
Just quickly, I want to gather your expectations at the beginning of the season, because you mentioned around the period where we met, and we were quite optimistic about what we were seeing on the pitch and the momentum that had been gathering in his first campaign as manager under Erik ten Hag. Things have not gone to plan this season. Are you quickly reshaping those expectations now and at the beginning of October?
Not quite. Just because I think, there's always, I feel like, if there's any kind of like positivity at United, and particularly after last season when there was a considerable amount, there's always something in you, maybe like the child inside you, where you think, oh, maybe we could win the league, maybe we could challenge to win the league. But from a realistic point of view, I was looking at it, I think, given the state of play at United and also the state of play, particularly at Manchester City, I was thinking this is another top four on a trophy season for United. And by that, I mean, okay, we finished third last year, so I'm thinking third again or second, more points, closer to Manchester City, another trophy or two, maybe an FA Cup again, and see what we can do in the Champions League. So in that sense, I feel that is still obtainable, but obviously recent form makes you, begin to doubt that. But I still feel at this stage where we are now, October, that is still doable. So it hasn't made me change it at the moment, because I still feel like this is a season that can be turned around. I am a glass half full supporter. Many people that know me will know that. But at the moment, no, I feel like it could be turned around. But yeah, it is pretty bleak. It's been such a letdown based on where optimism levels were at. There's been issues off the pitch, of course, as well. So yeah, at the moment, no, I still think there is a lot of time left. Obviously, cup competitions are in early days in terms of me talking about a trophy. Things where top four are concerned can change very quickly. How many times over the past couple of seasons, both with us, but I think of Liverpool, where they've seemingly been completely out of contention for top four, and then suddenly late in the day have put a good run together. So top four can be achievable without necessarily having an entirely good season. So on that basis, no is the answer to the question, but things will have to improve, and quickly.
Are we a cup team now?
Maybe, Dale, maybe. I mean, it's funny, isn't it? I think like over the past 10 years, you do gain a new perspective on things. I mean, both you and I are incredibly lucky in the sense that we started following United at a time where there was just unbridled success. And it's almost unrealistic in the sense. I know we're seeing Manchester City do similar things now, but you're bringing state ownership into the equation. But what Sir Alex Ferguson did over the length of time, it was, you look at it now and you think we were so spoiled, and things, probably won't be the same like that ever again. Obviously, United should be competing higher, should be competing for leagues and Champions Leagues. But you get to the point where that League Cup final last year, I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to enjoy every second out of this. And the Nathan 10 years, 15 years prior to that might have just been like, oh, it's a League Cup, great, we move on, we're going for bigger things. But I thought, no, I'm going to enjoy every second of this. We feel like we're on an upward trajectory, but things can change very quickly. So soak it up, because seeing your team win a trophy, I've been so lucky that I've watched my team all over Europe and seen us win multiple trophies. And some teams don't ever get anywhere near that. So I know this sounds ridiculous talking about Manchester United. As a fan, I think you enjoy the moments that you can, because look where we are now, a mere 5 or 6 months later. But obviously, as a football club, Manchester United should be aiming much higher. And there are issues that were, widely spoken about as to why we're not at the moment. But yeah, are we a cup team? Maybe. But I'd say, tell you what, top four, like I said, top four at the end of this season with 2 trophies in the bags based on where we are right now, I'd happily snap your hand off, mate.
It's slightly off topic, but I was just speaking to someone the other day about United and rambling on. But kind of drawn comparisons to what people were complaining about around this time last year and the mess we're seeing in terms of results this season. Complaints right now are absolutely warranted. But just to compare, some of the complaints that we were getting last season was pundits and some fans were saying it too on social media that Lisandro Martinez was too aggressive, and the double elbow that he gave 1 week, and people were complaining about those kind of things. And I was just thinking to myself, in comparison to now, people were really complaining about nothing, weren't they?
Oh, absolutely. And I was saying this to my brother at the game on Tuesday, and it wasn't necessarily specifically in relation to that game. Could have been in relation to any game this season. But do you remember last year? I certainly remember it in the Liverpool game. There was other games as well where you'd see the likes of Dalot, Martinez make a clearance, get it out for a corner, and it's high fives to slapping each other's backs. There's just this real camaraderie, just togetherness, and that seems to be really lacking so far. And I don't really know why that is, but it just feels like even at the early stages of last season, United season didn't really properly get going, did it, last season? So maybe after the World Cup. Before that, it was a little bit kind of here and there. There were some decent results, and then there were some poor results as well. But there felt like that there was this real sort of togetherness. And I was talking to my mate the other day, and you wonder if there's players still there that everybody knows, and the players know themselves, that the manager was probably looking to move on this summer. And I think that doesn't help in terms of squad togetherness and squad cohesion. There's obviously issues at the moment with Jadon Sancho. So it feels like they've gone into the season with things that have happened whereby, I'm not saying this is the reason, but it just feels that there's just a sting has been taken out a little bit of the team at the moment. And obviously that's not helped by results. Of course it's not. But the results won't necessarily come in every game at the start of last season, but they just felt like everyone's pulling in the right direction and there's this real togetherness, and the fans felt it too. And that's been concerning to see. Why that has gone again, I don't really know. But in addition to your injuries and your out of form players, etc., that's been something I've noticed, which is worrying.
Nathan, before we get on to the game the other night against Galatasaray, I wanted to bring up the fantastic initiative set up by the foundation, which you do work for, the winter coat appeal. And obviously, I'm sure lots of people listening to the podcast, wonder what that is. We've all got winter coat that we don't use anymore. I've got several coats that haven't worn in years. So this is something that I think is a great initiative. Nathan, can you explain it for us?
So basically what we're doing, to give a quick overview of the foundation, I know I've been on the podcast before to talk about that, but we are United's community arm, and we basically work with young people, primarily in Greater Manchester. We took our inspiration from the Busby Babes and United's long-held ethos of investing in young people and developing them and giving them an opportunity to thrive. At United, at the club, it's football. For us, it can be football, but it is just in everyday life and getting them to a position where they've come from a tough background to build a nice life for themselves. So we work with kids in schools, we work across the community. A well-known project of ours is Street Reds, which has been attended before by the likes of Marcus Rashford when he was a kid. Zidane Iqbal went to one of our Street Reds projects too. So that's a nice little link. But basically, we spoke to some of our kids, and it was quite sobering to hear when we wanted to get their concerns, and their concerns were keeping warm this winter, which is a pretty depressing thing to hear in 2023. So we basically committed £100,000 to securing warm items, warm clothing for them, hats, scarves, gloves, etc. And we want supporters to help out too. As you say, a lot of people may have coats kicking around that they just don't use anymore. So if you're at the game on Saturday at Brentford, 3 hours before kickoff and 1 hour after full time, you can go to the bag drop areas around the ground. There's one at the foundation building itself, which is a little red building on St Matt Busby Way, where you can drop these coats off. And these coats are going to be distributed around our network of schools and projects to ensure that these kids have got a nice big warm coat for winter. We've also partnered up with an additional charity in Ukraine, where hopefully we're going to be sending some coats over to. Don't need to add any reason why we're sending them to that particular part of the world. But yeah, this is an initiative that hopefully supporters can get involved with. I think it's the first time we've done it before, so uncharted territory for us. But again, it's, I've spoken many times about the fact that I'm really passionate about United being a community institution. Yes, it is this global, huge organisation now, but it should be rooted in Manchester, and it should support people in that area. We do work further afield as well, but this is something where supporters can really make a difference. So if you have a coat, I appreciate for match going fans, it's not necessarily practical if you go on the pub beforehand. But for example, if this game you're parking at the ground and you can stick a coat in your boot and bring it over, it'll go to a very good home. So yeah, we'd really, really appreciate that. And I thank them all in advance.
Like you said, if you're at the game on Saturday, do drop by, let in a code, because I'm sure plenty of people listening, we all have one or two there that we don't wear anymore. Coming into the winter months, it's a devastating thought, Nathan, really, that the young people out there, and one of their fears is that they'll be cold. Moving on to the game itself, 3-2 defeat to Galatasaray. Look, another devastating blow to what's been a desperate start to the season. The pressure is mounting for Erik ten Hag, although job safety is the last thing he needs to be concerned about, according to reports. United took the lead in 2 occasions, but ultimately collapsed. How are you feeling after what you've seen on the pitch?
I've got a lot of mixed feelings. After Crystal Palace, I was thoroughly depressed. There was just nothing in that I could get any kind of slither of positivity from it. And to be honest, Tuesday wasn't much different. What I found odd about Tuesday was there were some real positive moments, particularly going forward in that game. Hojlund was obviously fantastic. Mount stood out to me. I also thought Hannibal had a really good game, but those positives soon disappear when you look at the defensive performance, which was just schoolboy, wasn't it? And both in terms of individual performances, but just set up as well and structure. And we've seen it a lot this season. I think my biggest concern overall about United is probably the lack of concentration that we're seeing at key times. And I think this is an issue that has predated Erik ten Hag's time in charge. And last season, I felt like he got a lid on it at home. We had a really good record at home. We didn't concede many. There was a few times we went behind, notably in the derby, came back and won. Away was a different story, but you felt, okay, we're progressing from the season before. Whereas now you seem...
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, it seems to be, it was for Old Trafford was just a totally different kettle of fish, wasn't it? You were coming to Old Trafford thinking we'll win today against most teams. Away was obviously very different, but you're thinking, okay, we work on that. We've got a lot of things to iron out, but that seems to have come back this year. I mean, you look at Bayern, we were both there. They score, we score, they score almost instantaneously. That happened a number of times. The other night, you're talking like 6 and 4 minutes between our first goal and theirs, and then our second goal and theirs. And that, to me, is probably the most concerning element of everything, in the sense that, you can work on tactics, you can work on structure, you can change things. Things can change very quickly sometimes, but that's a recurring issue. And if you're leaking goals, as we do, no matter how good or otherwise we might be going forward, it's going to be a real uphill battle. So, yeah, very concerning.
It's difficult, though, because you look at the absentees in defence and can't put together really an ideal back four. We currently have a makeshift left back, which I'm going to get onto Amrabat shortly, but it's just so far from ideal. And you've got all these changes coming in every 2 weeks or so, and the back four can't settle, can't get used to the fact that it has a new goalkeeper behind it, who another person we're going to talk about in a bit. But it's just all over the place. It's hard to see us settle defensively when it's just chopping and changing.
100%, yeah. I think, to be honest with you, up until the more recent games, maybe against Brighton, certainly against Palace, I felt that the injury issues were being underplayed, if anything. I mean, like you say, you had so many people out. It was just ridiculous. And still, to be honest, throughout the team, obviously, bodies are coming back now, which is good. But you're right, defensively, it is so changeable. There's no cohesion between them. And they let's say they don't play together. You've got our new central midfielder playing at left back. You've got Dalot, who you think normally that's going to be Wan-Bissaka. Lindelof, that's normally Martinez. Okay, Varane is there. But there's just, like you say, it is, when those foundations are unsure and incohesive, it is going to be difficult to have that, to create anything that resembles how solid we were last year. And I was speaking to my brother when we were walking back after the game the other night, and we had a great defensive record at home last season. But invariably, we did have a pretty settled back five, didn't we? De Gea would always be there. Martinez was there for most of the season. Luke Shaw get there most of the season. Varane most of the season. I know these players did have little spells out, but invariably it was one at a time. wasn't it? Rather than them being a decimated back line. So you're totally right. But then at the same time, I also think, these are games at home. As I say, more recently I've been concerned because you're talking Galatasaray, who I didn't think were that great. Crystal Palace didn't have to be that great to beat us either. So that's where it is concerning. You think okay, you can still say that we're in an injury crisis, but when you're playing games like that and losing games and looking so hopeless at times, that's where you can't totally fall back on the injuries. I totally appreciate they are a big issue and it's hampering us massively, but these are the problems you got to solve at the end of the day.
Do you take assurances in the fact that the manager, Ten Hag, seems to be strongly of the opinion that he doesn't want to go jump into excuses after this bad run of results? That he's not there. There have been decisions from referees that have gone against United this season, quite a few. And we didn't make anywhere near the big deal out of it that Liverpool did. Almost called them for a replay at their game against Tottenham. But also injuries, which we've just touched on. These are things that managers could use as excuses. But Ten Hag has said time and time again, he does not want to make excuses. Do you take assurances from that? The manager is, he's not looking for any holes anywhere.
I think, first and foremost, I'm 100% behind the manager. I think he's got an enormous amount of credit in the bank. There was some really fantastic moments last season that have not made me feel as good about United in a long, long time. I think from what I hear, this is a guy who's just incredibly focused. He's got a huge job on, but he seems someone who is mentally up for it. Someone who I just have a really good feeling about him. So, and I think most United fans are the same in the sense of that they want to give this guy time. If not just for the fact that I think there is an element of fatigue of just the sort of rinse and repeat element of a manager coming in, looking a bit promising, not going so well, removed, repeat. But yeah, I feel like Ten Hag is helping himself at the moment. What I'd say from a refereeing decision point of view, I think at some point, maybe, hopefully, when things get better and he gets his feet under the table a little bit more, I'd like to see him almost, maybe not go to the extent of Jurgen Klopp, but start challenging some things, to stir the pot. Ferguson used to do it all the time. But I think at the moment, like you say, given the nature of United's results, if he starts kind of blaming one thing and blaming the other, I don't think that's necessarily a good look. Of course it does. Yeah, it really does. Yeah. So I think he's doing the right thing at the moment. He recognises this is nowhere near what it should be. And if he's blaming referees, which, there's something in, I'm not, obviously, refereeing decisions aren't to blame for our form, but we've had a lot go against us, a hell of a lot go against us. And in those small moments in games, and I think this United team have shown that they are a team that thrives on moments in the sense of when things go right for them. If we go ahead, that's going to help. If we go behind, they really, really struggle. And that's obviously got to change. But in a moment when we are like this, it would be nice to get a refereeing decision or two, and many have gone against us. But I agree with you. He's right not to call it out, I think, for the time being, and just focus on what he needs to do, which is to get results. Because if United play to their ability, they shouldn't need to rely on refereeing decisions for the most part. We get the results. So I do take assurances from that, yeah.
Amrabat does a job at left back. Well, everywhere but left back. Defensively, he looks very suspect. And I think that might be a bit harsh given that that's a player trying to fulfill a role that he's not favourable with. Do you think the new signings are getting hard pressed because of the unforeseen cauldron of shit that they've been thrown into?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, to be honest with you, I thought I've been impressed with Hojlund in almost every game, to be honest.
Yeah.
Also, Mount. I like Mount's energy. I thought was really good on Tuesday.
People have been
Obviously,
jumping on Mount though.
yeah, I find that a little bit odd, to be honest, because I mean, he's not actually played that many games, has he really? And you are talking about, I think what he's trying to do at the moment, Ten Hag, is we're at a situation where he was pretty pragmatic in his first season in terms of how he wanted United to set up. It wasn't what he wanted for United long term, and we're at a point now where he's trying to do that. He's bought in the summer to try and help that, and I think he would have probably wanted one or two more in as well. But that with everything that's going on with injuries and squad absentees, that has become harder. And coming back to the point of yours before, which is in terms of a settled midfield, a settled back line, everything is so unsettled. But I find Mount a bit of a peculiar one because I've been generally impressed with him. I don't feel like he's done anything particularly wrong.
I thought Palace
Certainly,
last weekend he was probably the one of few positives for me. There was some
yeah,
nice phases of play, and you could see. You could also need to understand too that he's not quite on the same wavelength of his teammates in terms of knowing what runs they're going to make, and everyone also is trying to get used to the fact that we've finally got a centre forward. When all these things start to click, you'd hope then that the impact that Mount has will be more significant. But no, I do agree that the criticism of him has been very harsh. I think people are expecting, I don't know, almost Maradona or Pele here. And his contributions, I think, for the most part, have been positive.
What's your kind of feelings on, because I've every time somebody asks me what do you think's up with United at the moment, I think I give a different answer. Where do you think it is a case of sticking with it, digging in, and getting through this phase until it can be settled, or are there bigger issues? I find it very difficult to come up to a point where I'm 100% in agreement with myself. What do you reckon?
I think there's definitely bigger issues around the place, but those can be amended over time. Look, the dressing room is always going to be a toxic environment when results are going the way they are for Manchester United right now. To be quite honest, I'd be worried if I heard a report to say that the players are happy. I hope they're not happy. What worries me is that Ten Hag is apparently worried to criticize some of the players that soft mentally, they can't take criticism. And right now it's a time where they warrant criticism because this is not acceptable. And if Ten Hag is afraid to, lay a lever out, that's an issue. That's a problem for me. But yeah, no, I do think we need to ride it out. I think, as you mentioned, there were so many players come back from injury. This is a manager that definitely has a credit in the bank from last season. We
Yeah,
definitely
100%.
overachieved. And when we
Yeah,
get the
100%.
players back from injury, we'll have a finer picture of where this team is and what Ten Hag really, really wants. But right now, it's a complete mess. I think there's nobody at the club that wants to make any drastic decisions in terms of firing this manager because everyone can see that it's all over the place.
Here's a scenario for you. So, and this is something that I kind of thought to myself, because I think you're right when you say we overachieved. So instantly sort of expectations levels
Yeah.
grow and maybe to unrealistic extent. So if United finished sixth this year, let's say they won a pot, but let's say there was a drop off, but let's say from like February onwards, we start to see some really good stuff. But ultimately, because our season had been, our form had been so poor in the first half of the season, top four's beyond us, we end up finishing sixth or whatever. At that point, do you stick? Because I kind of feel like I would. Whether this is because, as I say, I just feel like what we need is at this club is stability and a continuation. That I almost feel like I would take a slight reversing form this season from last year if I can see things are gradually getting better moving forward. But obviously, whether that would be shared by other supporters, I don't know. What about yourself? What do you think?
Yeah, look, I think most fans that I speak to are of the opinion that, and I would be too, that we have to crack out of this managerial cycle, rinse and repeat. Just, if you go on social media, you mentioned you're not sure fans will agree. Many won't. Many want a
Yeah,
new manager now
yeah,
because the manager that they want will say Luis Enrique, will just throw him out of a hat. They'll
yeah,
want him sacked in 12 months' time. And it'll be the same situation again. We'll be talking about players. Eric Ten Hag, which we both agree with, has put definitely has a credit in the bank from his first season. We have to give him that and allow him into his third season and see where we are there. If we finish sixth, and you mentioned we show a positive spell from February to the end of the season, I'd be quite happy with that. Because every manager is going to have ups and downs. Like I knew when Ten Hag came in, there's going to be a period like this. I didn't think it was going to be as bad as this in terms of losing 6 of our first 10 games, but there was
yeah,
going to be ups and downs. I'm not fully trusting of some of our key players either, Nathan. There's a few players that are still there from previous managers that leaving off bad smells. I think at the moment, maybe not that bad, but things could escalate quite quickly. And that worries me because Ten Hag needs players right now that he can trust. And he's finding it hard to get players that are fit. Yeah.
Mm.
So, and that brings me on to my next question, because Varane is a player that was singled out by Paul Scholes um, in the post match analysis. And he kind of said that he didn't look fit. Now, I was baffled by that initially, because I do not believe that Ten Hag would play Varane of all players if he wasn't fully fit.
Mm.
His injury record isn't very good. I think it could be a matter with Varane that he's not fully match sharp, and it's
Yeah.
if that's the case, he needs games, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a funny one, isn't he, Varane? Because he is a player that you need to manage in terms of his game time. And I think in an ideal world, United would have you'd have your Martinez at left centre half, and then you'd have Varane and another who you would maybe kind of. And I think they maybe looked at that over the summer. You'll probably know better than I. Where you could use Varane at the games that you need him, manage his fitness time. You know, almost kind of akin to the way that Ryan Giggs' fitness used to be managed towards the end of his career. He wouldn't play, he'd never play Saturday, Wednesday. Ferguson would have him right for certain games. And I think that's the way you would use him. But obviously not, Ten Hag hasn't got that luxury. So ideally you would have Varane playing most of the time. So I think you're right. To be fair, I think there's a lot of that with, in terms of you talk about match sharpness, I think there's possibly a little bit that with a lot of the squad, because a lot of them have not been playing since the start of the season. And if they have, they've had an injury in between. I think Casemiro's kind of in that bracket as well. He's been a little bit concerning, but he also, when he first came to United and started playing, he took a couple of weeks, if not months, to get going himself. It was that period, wasn't it, around kind of Christmas
Nate,
time,
and
where he really got going.
I said it on an earlier episode. I think Casemiro, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think he really enjoys his summer off.
Does he have a Wayne Rooney summer? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, Chubamiro as alternative MUFC had him down as, but no, I think there is a few players there that are not 100% match sharp, and that that would explain why we're seeing the results we are seeing, because other teams look the other side of it too is just going back to some of the results we've had, not including Galatasaray in this, but Palace. We lost the game, but these teams, no one can really say that they're playing better than us.
No,
I
well,
think
no, which is
that's another factor I think people should throw in what could be a bit of a, I'm not saying overreaction because the results are bad, but in terms of performances, they're not as piss poor. We're still dominating games, we're not breaking teams down, and then defensive lapses are getting in the way. But teams aren't outrunning us so much or dominating us.
I think I saw a tweet from a guy that I follow on Twitter, and he said something along the lines of United are struggling to, that we either can control possession but lack the penetration, such as against Palace, or we can
Hmm.
look fairly dynamic going forward, but then completely open whenever on the transition. So I know that's what it depends which way you look at it. You can look at what you just said there as being a positive in the sense of that if United start to improve, we'll get better and better. But on the other hand, you're thinking, well, a Galatasaray team and a Palace team who don't play particularly well shouldn't be able to beat a Manchester United team. It's not as if you can say, oh, well, they've come and they've had an absolute worldie, and United just aren't quite at it at the moment. Like, United are very much not at it, but they didn't, like Palace, I thought,
Yeah.
were pretty
Does it
average.
say more that they don't have to play well to beat us?
Exactly. Like, if you've got Galatasaray, I mean, look, Palace very well organised, and Galatasaray, took their opportunity, but you think of their goals, Galatasaray. The first one, every one of them calamitous in one way or the other, and that's where it's like, if you're so fragile at the back, then something has got to change there. Whether that's personnel, whether that's system, and I don't necessarily think it is just the defense. Totally agree with what you say in terms of minutes together, cohesiveness, but it is difficult because, like you say, you almost feel like we need to wait and judge until we've got some players back and got key players back, and we've got a regular-ish starting 11. But on the other hand, it should still be better because of the talent and that we've got in the squad.
I can excuse the odd mistake from our goalkeeper, but it was calamity after calamity on Tuesday night for Onana, and not for the first time in the Champions League. We've been here before with goalkeepers, though. Schmeichel, De
Yep.
Gea. The responsibility on Manchester United's number one is always huge. Does
Yeah.
Ten Hag need to make a change to his goalkeeper after signing 2 in the summer? Or, is Onana our number one? So stick with it.
I think just before I come on to that, Dan Harris, who many listeners I'm sure will know, tweeted after the game referencing, and I thought about this at the time, and he says it reminds me of Deportivo in 2001 when Barthez was chucking him in his goal quicker than Rude could score him. And it was a game, and it also finished 3-2. And Barthez had a shocker. I remember, I think Wes Brown got himself caught up in an issue with him. And again, it is illustrative of how, you're talking there, Barthez. I know Barthez was pretty wacky, wasn't he? But he was a World Cup winning goalkeeper. How, the scrutiny on the Manchester United number one is unlike any other. On Onana, I don't think Ten Hag should drop in, nor do I think he will. I think he will. I think this is something that you, for the moment, you need to kind of ride through. To me, he looks like, again, he's kind of a little bit of a victim of, and I'm talking here more about his distribution. United aren't playing to his strengths at the moment. He seems so deep. And I think, again, that is a product of the defence not being what Ten Hag wants it. Again, largely because of injuries, the lack of cohesiveness, the lack of understanding between the back four, the back five. So he doesn't seem sure. You saw the amount of times he was going long. That's just not what we're going to be wanting. We want him to be higher, to be sweeping up. So I feel like he's struggling there. Is handling. I mean, I'll be honest. Like I've not watched enough of him prior to his time at United to truly assess him as a goalkeeper. Obviously, you heard you saw on Twitter and what have you when he signed, the kind of general positivity based on these YouTube packages of his fantastic distribution. But at the end of the day, he's played for Inter Milan, he's played for Ajax, played in the Champions League final. He's clearly a very good goalkeeper. So I am tempted to think that his form is maybe a culmination of everything, and he's suffering with lack of confidence. But yeah, it has been worrying. Even before he did the pass on Tuesday, there was a moment where Galatasaray got him down
He
on the
palmed
left.
it. Yeah.
And it just looked really, he just never looks truly comfortable. And that is a concern. But I would be tempted. I don't think he'll get dropped. I think he will persist with him. But yeah, it's another element of it. But he's not helped, is he? When this team are conceding chances left, right, and centre. Yeah, he's not shouting himself in glory at all. Of course, he's not. But again,
Is he
it's difficult to
though?
judge.
Could the defense turn around and say, "I know they've been poor," but could the defense turn around and say, "Well, he's not giving us any assurances whatsoever"? Like just the game itself the other night with the Casemiro sending off. I'm looking back at that and I'm saying
Yeah,
single-handedly that is Onana's fault. Onana is the
yeah.
reason that Casemiro got sent off the other night, and when Casemiro came off, we totally lost our shape and they
Yeah.
split through us.
Yeah. I said to my brother at the time, or shortly after it, I think it was after they'd missed the penalty, and I thought to myself, I was almost a bit like, look, Casemiro would have probably got dog's abuse had he just let him go through, but you almost think we'd have been better off just letting him score, letting him level it up, and then having 11 players rather than taking him out. Because I just thought even though when they missed the penalty, I'm like, I just don't see us getting through this now because we look poorly organised with 11, never mind with 10. So yeah, I'm sure the defenders will have a thing or two to say about him. But there just seems to be, let's take it back to David De Gea. Okay, very different because David De Gea is a pretty young kid when he comes in, but he's coming in with a pretty sturdy back line, isn't he? With Rio Ferdinand, Nemanja Vidic, pretty settled, lot of experience in there, and he obviously took time to find his feet or hands, and Onana's coming in a very different circumstance. So I think, like with everything we United at the moment, I think there's mitigation for everything or understanding as to why things are not good. But then you can't excuse some really poor handling. There's been quite a few occasions this season where I've watched him. I think it was one at Bayern, obviously, where it's been a bit like, oh, that's not great. But this is a top goalkeeper. He's got a lot of experience in really high profile teams and really high profile competitions. I think generally, certainly if you'd have spoken to me in the summer, I would have said Ten Hag has got his signings spot on so far, and I trust him, and I still do. But again, like with everything else, you're gonna have to see an improvement, and when these things keep happening, it is harder to get out of the rut, isn't it?
There was one silver lining on Tuesday night as Rasmus Hojlund made 3 goals and 2 Champions League appearances for United. Are you happy with how he's settling in at the club?
Yeah, it's nice to talk about something a bit more positive now, isn't it? For 5 minutes, he looks great, doesn't he? This has been quite a few moments this season where I've thought to myself, oh, this is the moment. Garnacho's goal against Arsenal was one where I thought, right, here we are, lift off. And when he just powered through on Tuesday night, just pace, power, and then just delicately lifted it over the goalkeeper. It's like, we've got a centre forward. We've got a proper centre forward. Stands in front of the Stretford end. And it was like, here we go. And after that, I thought, we'll be all right here. We'll go on and win 3-4-1. We won't talk about any more about what happened after. But yeah, he looks like a beast. He looks sharp. His movement's great. I still don't think it's quite clicking with his other forwards, but I think it will. I think that will just come in time. But yeah, he looks like a really good signing, really exciting. And it's just a shame that he scored at the Allianz Arena and it didn't count for anything. He scored a double the other night, didn't count for anything. And then he had his first goal at Old Trafford against Brighton, shorts off for the most marginal of ball being out of play. So yeah, disappointing for him. But what I loved about it there when he did his post-match interview and he's talking about a goal and he was like, yeah, that's a Rasmus goal, that. And I just thought, I love that confidence. It wasn't. I don't even think it could be perceived as arrogance, just the way he comes across. But I really like that. It's bold.
Yeah,
It's really bold.
yeah.
But United need, and I've needed more characters like that. Where it's if he keeps doing it like that, then it'll be justifiable. But I like that. I like that about him. And yeah, let's fingers crossed he can continue and he can inspire the others to similar levels of performance.
I won't lie, Nathan. I'm a little bit worried about Bruno Fernandes. The lack of impact again the other night is a concern. Is he undroppable?
It appears to be, doesn't it? I'll struggle to say a bad thing about Bruno because, obviously, he's been a really, really good player.
I'm usually on the same page. No, I'm usually on the same page, but have a concern.
The other night he was on the right again, wasn't he? And wasn't he also on the right against Burnley? And I don't think he's ever as effective because I did think a few times, I was like, get him in the middle. I know what you mean. He's a funny player, Bruno, isn't he? Where there was a game recently, I think it was Forest, where he was really, really good. But yeah, there's been times where he has frustrated me this season. One moment that springs to mind is where we just made it 3-2 at the Allianz, and he receives the ball. I don't know, so like 10 yards inside the buying half, and then looks to spray it out and just gives the most tame pass to one of their defenders, which I think they then scored from. And there's been a few of them. I think he did a couple the other night. But yeah, I know what you mean. I still at the moment would have him playing every game. I think he's the type of player that once settled into a rhythm, he's a really, really good and really important player for United. But I do, I get it. Don't get me wrong. I watch it. I see why people are getting frustrated.
It's just, I think Bruno right now is playing, and I love Bruno Fernandes, but I think right now he's playing without his spark, without that spark that he brought to games. I know we got a bit of a teaser of that in the Carabao Cup game, a win over Crystal Palace, but he just, I think we're just missing that spark from him right now. And we have got so many players that are off form. I think when there's so many that are guaranteed a place in the team, that is a bit of an issue.
Yeah. No, it's a valid point. I would say I don't like. Okay, there's been moments that I've just touched upon briefly about small, poor moments of play, but generally, I still have him playing. I think he's the right person to be captain. I've had really positive experiences with him from a foundation point of view. He's absolutely sound with us. I really like the guy. Obviously, that doesn't mean he should be starting every week for Man United, but I think generally he is a player that is, can do things that other players can't do in this team. I appreciate what you're saying about the spark, but again, it's difficult in a situation like this when everything is kind of as it is, and the situation as it is, and everybody's struggling. Now, the counter argument to that would be he's the captain. He should be raising the standards, pulling people up, and I'm sure he is trying to do so. But he's not someone I'm overly concerned about, because again, I feel like when things get better, we'll see the same with Bruno. And when we get that cohesiveness, and when we get those more regular starters, I think getting Amrabat into midfield is going to be really important. I think that's going to help us. I think him having to start at left back is just not ideal at all for a number of reasons. So he's not. I would continue to play Bruno. Bruno would always be in my starting 11 at the moment. Appreciate what you're saying about a culture of being undroppable, but there are times and there are players that sometimes find themselves in that situation. But he's not one that I'm particularly concerned about at the moment. He'd 100% be in my starting 11 every time.
We're going to move on from Bruno because Nathan's giving me gang signs on the camera here. And Wilfred Zaha was buzzing the other night, and to be honest, look, there was parts of me watching some of the press duties that were quite happy for him. On Monday, he did a press conference and was asked quite arrogantly by the English media about his transfer over the summer and how, they kind of nearly almost deemed Galatasaray not being a big club, and was he bothered that his United career didn't go to plan? And he said that he wasn't bothered, and he really wasn't. He had a smile on his face and spoke about the honor of playing in the Champions League, which he later said was a dream to score in. There was part of me, Nathan, that, like I said, was quite happy for him because it didn't go his way at United. And I look back at that and I think a lot more could have been done to give him a better shot.
Oh, 100%. I think that could be said for a lot of players over the past 10 years that, they've been victim of the instability at Manchester United. I agree. I was pleased for him as well. And also I think it's so disrespectful, and it is such a sort of a Premier League centric way of viewing it, isn't it? He's going to Galatasaray, really well respected club, what fantastic fan base. You look at their stadium on a match day, and why would you not want to play there? And fair play for him to go over there and start a new life and go to a different country.
He also turned down big money, by the way, to go to Saudi Arabia to play Champions League football. So of all the players that is in the media now, you're looking at your Jordan Henderson, which is gathering some controversy. This is a player the English media should be saying, wow, hat tip.
Yeah, definitely. And even okay, it didn't work out at United, but there's no way on earth you can pin that blame entirely or even at all on him. It was, it was just one of the worst times, wasn't it, for him as a young developing lad? If Alex Ferguson had stuck around at that point, fantastic, but he didn't, and it was just, environmental wise, it was just unfortunate for him. But he went back to Crystal Palace and did really well there, and he's clearly a talented lad. And okay, he's maybe not gone on to go, play higher up the Premier League as others might suspect, but fair play to him. And like you say, it's nice to see. You want to see players visibly enjoying their football and buzzing to be in the Champions League. And I like what he said about whether this could be perceived as a bit of a dig. Maybe it was, I don't know, but I liked it when somebody in the press conference on the Monday asked him about have you spoken to the Galatasaray players about what it's like to play at Old Trafford? And he said, no, I've not. And then said, they don't need to, because there's nowhere on earth like playing at Galatasaray, in the sense of the atmosphere, as it's just like something you've never heard in your life. And I like to hear that, a player saying, talking about, cause it's clearly mint over there, isn't it? And it's good for him.
He's a refreshing character, I find. After 2 defeats in 2, can United reach the knockout stages of the Champions League, Nathan?
It's going to be really
big ask, isn't it?
Yeah, massive. I mean, if you're looking at how things are now, you say no, just purely based on forgetting, mathematically it could be done, but based on how we are away from home, we've got to go and win at Galatasaray. We've got to go and win at Copenhagen. We've probably got to get a result against Bayern Munich. And obviously, we've got to win at home at Copenhagen, and you're not even necessarily at the moment. You're not confident about getting a result in any game, are you? So at the moment, you're thinking it's a massively uphill task. Yes, it can be done because mathematically it can still be done, but it's going to be really, really difficult.
Brentford have only one win in the league this season, but we can't underestimate anybody at the moment. What's your predictions for that one?
Oh my God, Dale! I don't know. I've got to the point where every time I go to Old Trafford, or certainly recently, with any optimism, we're terrible. And then when I think I went to the League Cup game. Obviously, that was coming off the Burnley game, but I was like, this could be, we're going to make changes tonight. And then we were fantastic. So, yeah, I don't know. I just need to keep in my mindset that we're going to lose. And then you never know. We might turn it on, but it's really difficult. Because like you say, you are worried in every game now. It has reached that stage.
I think that's felt on the pitch, though. I've noticed that.
Well, yeah, quite possibly. Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, this is obviously you would like, wouldn't you, for United, for Ten Hag to pull something out of the bag for it, which obviously we can. Talking it's with all due respect, this is a team United should be beating, because you feel like going into the international break on the back of another defeat or another bad result, and then 2 weeks without it. Saying that, it might be nice for us also have a break. I think we'll all be happy about that at that point, irrespective of the result. But on a serious note, we need to just be getting this win, and then it's like a bit of a break. Players will probably do the plays good, just a bit of change of scenery for the time being before we come back, hopefully with more men fit and start again. But prediction-wise, I really struggle. I just don't know. We could win, absolutely, but, based on recent form, you just don't know.
We're going to have to wait and see. Well, look, we've
got ridiculous about Brentford at home, and I'm like, I don't know.
Look, I know the feeling following United in 2023. Nathan, we have a question round as well that we need to get through before we wrap it up. And Shane Griffin has asked me, with your work for the foundation, he wants me to confirm whether the club send the proceeds from tickets donated to season ticket holders.
Yeah, that's correct. So basically how this works is, if you're a season ticket holder and you can't make a match, you can return your ticket to the club. And when you do that, there's the option to, rather than receive the funds yourself, to donate the cost of that ticket to the foundation. So the ticket does not come to us, but the cost, if you're, where I say £37, that comes to us, and that goes into our pot to use. And last year we raised over $500,000 through that, which I thought was amazing. And I wanted to make a big deal of that, because this is all coming from the generosity of United fans. And, we don't underestimate. It's, even match by match, it's not an inconsiderate amount of money. I could totally understand why support would rather that be back in their pocket. So we're massively grateful for that money. As I say, like £500,000 makes a massive difference to our projects and funding our staff to work in schools every single day of the year. So it makes a massive difference, and it means a lot to me, for my fellow United fans, to be investing that and to think of that and to think, yeah, that's a really good thing. So yeah, it comes back to us and it is used. It goes to a really good cause and makes a massive difference to a lot of young people's lives.
So if the club give the foundation to £39, and let's say for my season ticket, if I donate it, does the foundation get the full £39?
Yes, yeah. So the face value of the ticket, that is what we get. So obviously depending on where you sit in the stadium. So that is you give your ticket back, cost you whatever, £37. Foundation get £37.
Like with Ports at the moment, I suppose you could say the elephant in the room. The season ticket holders handed back their tickets, should say donated to the foundation, and the subsequent person who bought that ticket gets it as part of a hospitality package. I assume then the foundation gets the full value of that.
So obviously, in terms of that those stories, obviously I've seen these stories. I'm obviously aware that the club are looking into what happened on Tuesday. There's going to be a response, I'm sure, hopefully early next week. I've not been told that, but they are looking into it. In terms of those details and those specifics that you mentioned, I'm really not aware of those details. But essentially, the process is that a ticket is given back at £39, and then a ticket is sold on at the same value. That is the process. I've seen obviously, rumours and opinions on Twitter, but can't really comment on them because I honestly don't know the detail behind it. But I can assure United fans who give their ticket, that the money that they have paid for that ticket is coming back to foundation. And then in terms of the issue you mentioned, I know the club are looking into this.
I'm sure the clarity will be appreciated, Nathan. Marlowe asks, Rashford is getting in the neck at the moment, but I don't think Bruno has been good enough. Do you think the captaincy is having a negative impact on his performances? Now, I know you've already said defensive of Bruno, and I know I asked the question, but I wasn't jumping on him myself. I think we're much better with Bruno in the team. And when I look around the side at the moment and players that are putting in that maximum effort, I don't fault him in any way. I think he is working hard. It's just not coming off for him. But do you think, Nathan, to answer Marlowe's question, that the captaincy is having a negative impact on him?
Not for me, to be honest. And the reason I say that is because, okay, it became official in the summer, but he was captain for a long period last year. Also, alluding back to his involvement with the foundation, I've always been really, really impressed with how he's a leader, absolutely. And he said to us that he wants to leave his mark on Manchester. He's been really, really keen to get involved with our stuff, to help organise it with other players. So to me, he strikes me as someone, look, I don't know the guy well at all. I've had a few interactions, but he strikes me as someone who embraces it and wanted it. And I don't think it's weighing heavy. I feel like he is. I think he is. He has always been a player, hasn't he? As often the best players sometimes are, where they have these frustrating moments where they do things and you're like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And then the next thing, he's playing this pitch perfect pass into whoever, or he's dragging us out. And
the fickleness of football fans, Nathan.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. And that is just the way, and it always has been. Like, I always remember, I don't know why this particularly sticks in my mind, but this was it was the game that Makeda scored the winner in 2009. And it was a year where Ronaldo, summer prior, had been heavily linked to Madrid. I think he wanted to go, but Ferguson got another year out of him. And I remember in this particular game, I don't know why it sticks in my mind, but he'd made a run and he'd been tackled and he thought it was a foul, and it very clearly wasn't a foul. And he was on his knees and he just threw his arms up in the air. And this guy next to me was like, "Get the F up, you blah 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 blah." And then he goes on and scores 2 goals to get us back into it before Makeda scores the winner. And I'm like, that's Cristiano Ronaldo at a time where he was our main man. Okay, maybe not in compared to the previous season, but he had a fantastic season, 30 plus goals, absolutely brilliant, won the league, Champions League final, League Cup, and he's getting absolutely moaned at. So fans always hone in on these small little details. And I think Rashford was mentioned in the question, and I thought that was similar there, that it was frustrating me the other night because you can feel, again, this kind of social media agenda, as it did with Maguire, filtering into real life. And every time he touched the ball, even he did all right the other night, I thought, Rashford. Every time he touched the ball, there was a feeling of like, do something or we're going to moan at you. If you don't do something, we're moaning at you. And there was a moment in the second half where he got the ball and 2 men were on him. And Rashford's struggling at the moment, I think, because he's not got that overlapping fullback. That's a big deal because he's having to take 2 men on rather than Shaw taking one with him. And Rashford kind of burrowed himself into a corner, and I could feel the people behind me getting ready to just volley him. And he had this really nice little flick just to get him out of trouble. And everyone was kind of completely disarmed by it. But I thought it was indicative of, I think, who asked the question, was it? What's his name? I don't want to sound really impersonal. Marlowe. So what he was saying, I thought was right. I think Rashford's been getting in the neck, and I don't think Bruno at times had been playing much better. So yeah, I think it's funny, isn't it, how these agendas arise? But yeah, I've gone off on a massive tangent there. But no, I don't think the captaincy is weighing heavy on Bruno.
No, I think with Rashford the other night was a perfect example of a player that's playing with a lack of confidence, and that's why on the last episode we had Jonathan Strager on, and we spoke about the social media pylon that exists around Rashford, and I'm quite uncomfortable by it, especially after that performance the other night, because, like I say, this is a player that's struggling with confidence. It's a player that scored 30 goals last season, and that's not something that you want to exactly knock or to kind of stop from blossoming again. The other night when he came off the pitch, we weren't creating any chances anymore. And I think that was something for people to kind of think about that are calling for him to be taken out of the team. And I'm talking about Rashford. Rashford's creating chances every week. Maybe frustrating the fact that he's not putting them into the back of the net. They're being deflected and going wide and blah, blah, blah. And some weeks they hit the back of the net, and some weeks they don't. But this is a player that I think, again, the Ten Hag is going to play through this phase, this tough period of not scoring goals. And his assist the other night was terrific. Put on a plate for Rasmus Hojlund, a great finish. Obviously, people would point to the wasted opportunity that he squandered when he squared a ball to Bruno Fernandes. But I can assure you that Marcus Rashford of last season, full of confidence, is going for a goal and he's putting it
He
in the
scores
back of
that.
the net. Yeah, he's
100%.
putting it in the
100%
back.
scores that. You could
100%.
sense when he was running through, like I was right behind it. And in comparison to last year, when I saw him run through on many occasions, like he's bagging, he's scoring. On Tuesday night, didn't have that. I was like, I don't know, he looks a little. And then as soon as he sort of delayed, and you could see Bruno, just that indecision was there, and that that will come back 9 times out of 10. He bags that, and he did it last season. So I think that was perfectly illustrative of your point that confidence is not high at the moment, and it frustrated me a little bit in the way that you could feel the crowd was a little bit aggy towards him. And I get the frustration at the moment, but it's like I say, he scored 30 goals last season. Like, get behind him. He's not having absolute stinkers every week. Yeah, he's not quite on it at the moment, but get behind him rather than instantly going with that, like you say, getting sucked into that social media narrative and mouthing off on him.
Absolutely, Nathan. We've one more question, and Dave Cleaver always submits one. Usually of some humor or something a bit different, but he asks.
Sounds like my kind of guy.
Yeah, quite bluntly, he's in with a punch with this one.
Here we
what
go.
happens if we lose to Brentford?
I don't know. I don't think anything happens. I think the mood
move on.
worsens. I think the what worries me, I think, is maybe more after the international break. As I said to you before, I feel very much I'm in this for the long haul, Eric. Like, give you time. I feel like you need the time, you deserve the time. It's as we've seen over the past 10 years, this is not a quick fix. A manager needs time. But what concerns me is more after the international break. We've got Bramall Lane, which again, it's away from home. Form away from home is not good. Followed by big game in the Champions League, followed by Manchester City. That concerns me more than Brentford. And obviously, if you lose Brentford, you're then going into them on a negative footing with a lot of pressure on. But I feel like nothing will happen, in my opinion, after Brentford, other than the mood worsening if United lose. But it's there after that I'm a bit concerned. But yeah, he at some point that we've spoken at length in this pod about lots of mitigating factors, things that are just not help him, etc., etc. But at Manchester United, at some point, you've got to start getting results. And I think last season, again, another thing which led to this optimism was that we had some stinking results last season, mostly away from home. And I felt like I went to them all. I was speaking to someone before. I got 5 games in the ballot last year, and it was Liverpool, City, Arsenal, Newcastle, and West Ham. So the aggregate score of that was insane. Oh my God. But the reason I bring that up is because I'm pretty sure that after all or most of those games, we won the next game, get it out, crack on. And you've got to get that winning momentum back, haven't you? And I thought we turned a corner after we beat Burnley and Palace. Forgetting that, Burnley wasn't great performance-wise, but dig in, win, clean sheet, play well against Palace. It felt like, okay, here we go again. And we've got to find that again. And despite all these issues, Manchester United, you've got to start getting results.
Nathan, I couldn't agree more. We need results desperately.
Oh my God.
Absolute pleasure, as always, to have you on. How can people follow you on social media?
So I'm Nathan L. Thomas on social, and do, if you would like to follow the foundation, which is MU_foundation. As I say, we do work throughout the year in schools, in community projects. It's a really, really big organization, which I'm hoping to kind of give a little bit more in the spotlight for fans that don't know as much about us. But it really makes me proud to be a United fan, to see the work that we do, and hopefully, if you follow us and you find a little bit more about us, if you don't know already, you'll feel the same too. But yeah, thank you everyone for listening, and hopefully you bring your coats to Brentford before a comfortable 4-0 win for United.
Don't forget your coats.